Hello once again everyone, and welcome back to Moveset Breakdown. So this will be part 3 of our breakdown of Jin Sakai from Ghost of Tsushima, and specifically today we're going to be covering the wind stance. Now before I begin, first off, welcome to the decent amount of new subscribers I got recently. Welcome to the channel, really glad that you subscribed, makes me feel better. But either way, if you haven't seen this show before, what this is I am taking movesets from video game and occasionally TV characters, and I am breaking them down and looking at the individual pieces. So this is not meant to be a realism analysis, this is just meant to be me appreciating character building and storytelling through choreography. So on that note, this is, like I said, part 3, so you may want to go back and watch part 1 and 2 to get a little bit of context. But in regards to the wind stance, we've got a fun one today, because today involves both kicking and spinning, two things that I am notoriously good at, he lied. Now, before we get into the wind stance itself, I did forget to cover one part of the water stance from last week, which is how Jin blocks. So as you know, every guard that you take will have both a blocking stance as well as a regular guard stance. And in regards to water, we were hanging out here, right? And then when he goes into block, he will actually move up and place his hand against basically the weak of his sword, and this will be his general block position. When he uses it, it looks exactly the same as all the other instances that I discussed in the stone stance video. And what I find unique about this one is, one, it does show him using what I would refer to as half swording, sort of. He's not actually gripping it or even pressing on the back. His hands, his fingers are just kind of hovering on the flat here, basically, and he's kind of putting himself into almost a bogan-like position, which is unique. As far as I know, there aren't a ton of instances of basically half-swording that I have seen. I have seen a couple instances in which people will reinforce before delivering a cut or something along those lines, but I haven't seen, blocking and thrusting or things of that nature. So I see nothing wrong with this per se, but it is unique, and it doesn't really lead into a whole lot. Now, back to the wind stance. As far as character building, I was kind of disappointed with the wind stance and the moon stance, but I'll tackle that when I get to it. Because when it comes to Jin's character, there's really a conflict going on within him. And it's his choice to remain with the samurai way that he was taught by his uncle, that has been handed down to him by his father, etc., which he describes the samurai way, or our honor died on the beach when they meet the Mongols and they basically get slaughtered. And him using more underhanded tactics and essentially becoming a shinobi, and that kind of breaking from tradition. But it's also seen in his swordsmanship. I mean, the stance that we start off with, his stone stance, is, like I said, the Tsushima Islander way. But when he moves into water, he uses a lot of techniques that the Mongols use. In fact, he specifically learns it from watching and fighting Mongol captains. So to watch him evolve and not throw away everything he learned, but to build upon what he learned to tackle a new threat is a really, really cool way of showing how he is not discarding where he came from. He's just adapting it. And that's why I think his shift from a samurai of the clan Sakai into the ghost is so unique, is because it's not just him, dressing like a ninja, it's also everything he does. But anyway, the wind stance, I'm kind of disappointed by, like I said, because wind plays such a big part of the game. I mean, as one of my friends who I watch stream the game would refer to it, Wind Daddy, so the spirit of Jin's father that guides you around the island, as wind is your map marker. There's no indicators. The wind will blow in the direction you need to go. That's a huge aspect of it. And so I kind of imagined that the wind stance would be reflective of maybe techniques specifically from his father, or even further in regards to him kind of breaking from tradition / building upon tradition. And what we got kind of disappoints me. It's still okay, but it's just not as interesting as I thought it would be thematically. Now, what is the wind stance for? The wind stance is specifically to beat spearmen, and I can kind of see how it's supposed to do so, but not necessarily the best. But like I said, this isn't a realism analysis, so let's just get into it. So our wind stance is going to be basically here, right? Now you may think this looks very similar to our universal video game dodge position, and it does. The sword is held a little more horizontal, and the hand is just kind of hovering down here. It's even kind of slightly behind him. Now this very open position at first seems like a pretty good idea against spears. You don't want to be too narrow when you are fighting a spear, especially with a sword, because if you are, it's very easy for them to use their tip game to get around to either side of you. Instead, you want them to target center mass, so that way you can move away from it with a cover and then hit them, or alternatively, something, an action from Fiore that would look very much at home with this would be the breaking of the point followed by an attack, something that moves you out of the way, and Jin does do that. But before we get into action, like I said, this is his general stance. He's inviting a thrust just straight into center mass. His sword being held kind of back behind him is just kind of odd, because it looks like he's getting ready to bring it across him in some way, but he doesn't. His other hand just kind of hovers down here, kind of useless. So a bit of a strange one. But in regards to his block, that's where we actually see a guard, and I kind of wish they'd switched the two. So when he goes to block, he adopts the stance of waki. Now my pronunciation on that, because my accent is a little bit terrible, waki, anyway. But essentially it's here, right? To me, this would be Nebenhut or Kodalonga, long tail. It's one of my favorite positions, actually. I like fighting out of this a lot with longsword. And I really like that we get to see it a little bit, and certainly it leads into his perfect parry very easily. It's very mobile. He'll also take it other times, like for example, when he does his not quite perfect dodge, he'll step out of the way, move into waki, and then follow with a cut from below. So it's good to see it, and certainly adapting it to this stance, it's cool, but I wish this was his normal guard, and then he had some sort of other block. But anyway, so from here, now we get into the fun bit. So the main abilities that you get out of this, he does have a relatively long kata, if you will, if you just attack, but really the only two bits we need to cover are his spinning cuts that cover distance and his kicks. So the Typhoon Kick is the first thing we're going to cover, and what it is it's a very powerful kick meant to dislodge opponents, and it can actually launch opponents a decent way, and knock them off cliffs and things of that nature. I had to practice this a lot, and I'm still not 100% happy with it, so please forgive me, I don't have a kicking background. But what Jin is going to do is he's going to step up, and he's going to kind of load himself a little bit, right? So he's not quite making the opening like we did before. Instead, he's very much just kind of prepping and lowering himself down. Now, what he's going to do from this position is he's going to bring his back leg up, right? So he's going to bring this in, and he's going to kind of hop into it, so he's sinking his weight underneath. Then from here, he's going to lower his hand down and his torso, and then extend a kick upward. So altogether, it'll look a bit like this. So here, boom. Now he is extending that that kick, pretty much at a 45-degree angle, which I am not necessarily capable of, certainly not consistently. But when he does this, he's always kind of targeting the chin. On some of the bigger guys, it hits them right in the torso. But either way, here's that again. So we lower ourselves, boom, and he does then pretty much hop right back into guard. Now, depending upon how quickly you move out of the kick, it does almost look like he brings his other hand down, so he's kind of got both hands on the ground. But as near as I can tell, he's by preference trying not to put his sword down as much as he can. His kick is sideways, all that sort of normal stuff. When I first saw this, I was really intimidated by it. A little bit of practice though, it's really not that bad, it's just I'm not very good at it yet. Jin certainly seems to be very good at it, as he can launch people across the way. So again, the Typhoon Kick, not too complicated per se. So I'll show it from the front. So we're here, step up, lower yourself, boom, and then we're just back up. Now, from there, if you move into his regular cutting, we will see two kind of special cuts and then another kick, which is going to be, so he recovers back and he'll just move into stance again. To cover distance against spearmen, what he'll do is actually kind of very similar to if you saw my Geralt of Rivia breakdown. We're going to have a step forward, which loads our leg, followed by a jump and then a descending cut. So again, nothing too crazy necessarily. Here's it from the side, but step up, cut into it. As you can see, I am a master of spinning. But nothing too crazy so far. And I think the idea behind this is he's supposed to be inviting an attack to middle and then using his offline step to try and void their attack or something along those lines. But again, it doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. I don't know, it just seems a little strange. Now, following this, he'll do a leaping one like we just did, he'll land right foot forward down here. His next cut, he will still spin around, but he will not leap this time. Instead, it's going to be just turning and then cutting as you bring your lead leg around. So together, they should look something like this. So we're here, and it's going to be load, hop, turn, cut. And now here's that going forward. Cut, cut. Very solid. And Jin is better than I am about not leaning forward. He keeps a very erect position, which I can just not do. Now, following this last cut, he will launch into another kick, which is kind of the other big special part of wind stances. Following this, he'll just go into some pretty basic cuts we already really know. And the cuts that he will launch are going to be in the stone style, so hard passing footwork with a couple different angles. So we've just finished our cut, and we're down here. We're right foot forward, our sword is low. What we're gonna do to execute this next kick is it's gonna be a kick with our right leg. And according to a buddy of mine, this is similar to a switch kick, which I have practiced a couple times to try. I can't quite do it, but either way, the way Jin seems to do it is basically, we're down here. What we're going to do is we're going to step up with our back leg, and we're gonna load that kick. So we're here, step up and load. Now we're going to drop our weight down as we bring our leg around, but we're not doing a swing. Instead, we're going to kind of pull it tight to us and then extend. So I'm going to bring myself down, extend it out, and then hopefully be able to stay in guard. And on this one, Jin's kick is so crisp. I mean, he really has that full snap leg extension. I'm pretty sure you'd be able to hear his trousers do that little whipping noise that karate gis do. I do not have that kind of expertise, so bear with me. But from the side, we've landed our second spin. We're going to step up, down, boom, and that's pretty much the kick. It's not too complicated to do. In fact, I found going into this one to be a little bit easier than doing the initial one, but maybe that's because I've done the initial one first. So let's go ahead and try and put those three together. Good luck. So our first spin, load, cut, cut, extend, and hopefully be able to stay in guard. Like I said, it has a ton of momentum, and I kind of expect it to be a looping kick, but it's not. It's that solid extension. So now I will do it again from this side. Let's see if I can get the frames right. So, load, step, cut, in, boom. Now, out of this, once he finishes that final extension and has the balance to stay where he is, which I do not, so we've just come around and done our kick, right? He'll bring his leg back down, and now we actually finally see a cut coming up from his left side with crossed hands. As up to this point, like I mentioned in water and stone, he never seems to cut from this side low unless he's doing it with one hand. However, following this, he'll recover, and to get himself out of this very low position, he turns his hands over and just steps up with a nice crisp number 4 cut, basically. And from there, he'll just launch into some pretty regular stone stance style cuts. But altogether, if you want to do the full Typhoon then into combo, it should look something like this. So, we're here for our Typhoon Kick. Boom. Then if you want to just launch straight into attacking, here, spin, I'll back up a little bit, around, boom, cut. Now I'll show that from the side as best I can. So, Typhoon Kick, boom, I'll go ahead and back up, leap, turn, in, boom, cut. Now, like I said, I'm not nearly as practiced as Jin is, and he can do it a heck of a lot better, but here's an average Joe who's been practicing for about 3 weeks or so, on and off, and overall, it's not impossible, just going to require a lot of work. I still don't think, as far as the other stances go, that wind is terribly good thematically. It's cool, don't get me wrong, and it's nice to have the kick ability, but I would have liked to see it tie more into Jin's story, as it kind of seems to be a bit of a... The kick is really the cool bit, and it's the powerful bit, it's the useful bit, and then the rest, not as interesting. But to finish off, of course, we'll be going over another way that Jin sheaths his sword, For this one, relatively simple. What you're going to do is after you've finished your cutting combination, you're going to bring the sword in, and you're just going to give it a nice hard flick out, which will expulse it. He seems to add a little bit of pull with his other hand. Boom. Then it's just going to be into the scabbard. So, overall, pretty simplistic. Like I said, not a terribly long video this week. Certainly an active one. If you want to try this at home, make sure that you have a soft space to land on, because you're going to fall over a couple times. Definitely make sure there's nothing around that you can kick. You might accidentally send like your cat into space or something. But either way, welcome to the channel, new subscribers. I may hopefully get better at spinning and kicking and all that, but either way, next week we'll tackle the moon stance, and then we'll be done. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll go over some other move sets another time.